Hello Quarkus contributors. In this brief video, we would like to show you how you can rebase and squash your commits from your Quarkus pull requests using IntelliJ IDEA really easily. The reason we want to show this in IntelliJ IDEA is because IntelliJ IDEA makes it really easy to perform these operations, and because a lot of you folks out there use IntelliJ IDEA anyway. So to set things up, what I've done here is I've created a sample pull request of mine. So this sample pull request simply changes one file, the contributing ND file, in a non-important way. So I just added two commits here that add some wording. And what happens often enough is that when you open your pull request, you might be asked to rebase onto master, either because there's a conflict between the files you've changed in your pull request and what's already been merged on master, or there is something important change that the project maintainers think you need to pick up in your pull request. Now, what IntelliJ IDEA does to make this really easy is that it has this excellent operation that's called rebase current onto selected. So actually, in order to do that, first of all, my screen here shows that checked out the sum test branch, and the log shows me that my sum test branch is ahead of my local master by 2 commits. But I know for certain that my master here isn't up to date with the latest master from upstream. So what I do is that I'll update my local master to get the latest. So I'll just go here to VCS and update project, or I could just click Control T. So what that does is that it updates my local master to point to the latest master from upstream. And now what I'll do is that I'll check out my sum test branch, which I have here. I check it out, and I will use the rebase current, which is the current is sum test, onto selected, which is master. So I click on master and rebase current onto selected. So what that magically does in IntelliJ IDEA is take my 2 commits from the sum test branch and rebase them onto master. Now, if there were no conflicts, as there weren't any here, IntelliJ just does that automatically. If there were conflicts, I would be presented with a screen that would allow me to, would force me actually to resolve those conflicts. Now, the second order of operation that you are often asked to perform is to squash commits. We want to squash commits because we want our Git history to contain meaningful commits, which makes it a lot easier for us, for example, to revert things, or makes it easier for us to understand the history of changes. So in order to squash these 2 commits, which don't make sense to have them as separate commits, these would be much better off as a single commit, what I would do in IntelliJ IDEA is that in the log, git log, I would click here on the first commit of my pull request, and I would select interactively rebase from here. Now IntelliJ would show me a pop-up window with these 2 commits. Depending on the version of IntelliJ IDEA you use, this pop-up window might look different. I'm using the latest, the 2020.1 EAP, which has updated the UI a little. So if you're on 2019, one of those versions, it might look a little different, but essentially the functionality is the same. So what I want to do here is I want to go to the second commit, and I want to squash it. So I'll select the proper message, and I'll say, I'm going to say add basic info. Great. Now I have 1 commit because IntelliJ shows me that I've squashed the second commit into the first one, and I press start rebasing. IntelliJ automatically shows me in the log that now I only have 1 commit, and what I need to do now is I need to push my change. Now, if I just try to regularly push the change with the git push, this isn't going to work. Because, well, it might. In this case, it might, in some cases, if you haven't had to rebase on master and you haven't had to make like destructive changes, but in most cases you will have to force push into your branch. That's just fine because you're usually the only one that uses a branch that you use to open a pull request. So what I would do here in IntelliJ is that I'm going to open up the dialog for pushing, and instead of actually selecting push, I'm going to do force push. And IntelliJ warns me about it. I don't want to hear about it because I know what I'm doing. So now I've pushed the branch, I force push the branch, and I see that origin sum test has only one commit, and it's one commit ahead of the actual or master. And of course, if I click here, I see that everything is reflected as is reflected on the pull request as I expected it to do. One commit with the changes. And that's the summary of how to rebase and squash your commits when you're contributing to Quarkus from IntelliJ IDEA. Thank you very much for watching.